Are you doing Facebook as well?
No, I'm not doing Facebook. So just recording for the moment. I can now do Facebook, stream to Facebook, but we'll talk about that a bit later. So hello everyone and welcome to, as Louise has got on her screen, number 10 of our Wellbeing Wednesday. What's that in anniversary? What's the
10? Ooh.
The garnish or the, I don't know, someone will know. So we're up to number 10. 10.
10.
Good on you, Sally. So we're up to number 10, and we have with us today the amazingly wonderful Sally Murfet from Tasmania, and we'll introduce Sally in a moment, but I would like to welcome you all. Wellbeing Wednesday is an initiative that Louise and I set up at the start of COVID-19 and lockdown, because we wanted just to provide a space for people to come together, because we knew wellbeing was going to be a really important part of lockdown. We also knew that from our network of rural, regional and remote women that there were some fabulous women out there who had really just great stories to share from their everyday lives. And so we thought, what better thing to do than to interview some of them and get them to share their stories. And so we've had 10 up till now, and each one has been so different and each one has been so wonderful. I just think the lives that we all lead, our everyday lives, we all have so much wisdom to share from our experience, and it's been a privilege to hear from women from all over Australia about what some of their life lessons have been, and just how sharing those life lessons can really help other people. And so we've had a number of our frequent flyers. So we've got a really core group of women who have been joining us, some of them for 8, 9 or 10 sessions. And then we have a few people come in and out. And so if you're new, welcome. We're so pleased you've joined us today. And my name is Cynthia, and I'll ask Louise to introduce herself in a moment, and then Sally. I am a leadership coach and facilitator. I love thinking about how we can perform to be our best selves, and I work a lot with teams and leaders on how we can be our best and be high performing. And for me, well-being is a critical part of being able to perform at your peak. And I personally am interested in well-being because I'm often really bad at it, and so it's something that I'm constantly challenged by and I really need to pay attention to and work on. So it's good to be able to do work where you're learning yourself to help yourself as well as help other people. Louise, over to you.
Hi everyone, and you've probably heard, I suppose, both of us introduce each other every week. I was just checking, we've got Elizabeth, who has dropped from first class to business class now, being that her frequent flyer status is 8 out of 10. It'll be interesting if anyone has been with us right up until today, being our 10th session. So that's kind of a fifth of the year, isn't it? So if you are hearing the same story, I'll try and keep it the same, but very similar to Cynthia. That's probably why we have connected and work well together. We're very different in our style and approach, which enables us to work well together. I'm in design mode at the moment in my business because I'm running a 2-day women's leadership program, which I've been running over the last few years. And they told me yesterday that it was going ahead and it's all via Zoom. So yeah, that's my head is thinking, oh, how do I do that? Because like we get together for 1 hour and that actually is quite exhausting. So to go for 2 days. So I do a lot of design work, a bit of delivery, coaching and mentoring in the leadership space, which is great fun.
Fabulous. So the way that our session works is that today Louise is going to be the interviewer of Sally, have a little chat with Sally. And I will keep an eye on the chat box. So I've now got 2 screens. I'm super proud of myself. So if my attention is going over that way, it's because I'm looking at the chat box and just trying to keep an eye on all of you. So we would love you to go to your chat box right now. Make sure that you've selected down the bottom to all panelists and attendees, not like me right at the start of this one where I had all panelists, so no one was seeing what I was saying. We'd love you to keep interacting, put your comments in. We'll try and get to them through the sessions. We might need to miss a few, but we also want you to ask your questions as well. So you can ask your questions via the chat box, or you can also do it in the Q&A box as well. Without further ado, I would love, oh, and sorry, one thing I forgot to say is at the end of this session today, the Victorian Rural Women's Network has initiated the virtual country cuppers, which I know many of you would have heard of. Some of you would have participated. If you've participated in one so far, or you're going to participate, maybe put up your hands by using the reactions little button down the bottom of your screen. Put up your hands. I did one last night, which was really terrific, and I can't see. Australian Women in Ag is going to be hosting one as well. So we're just going to hang around after this when we finish officially at 2, and stick around just for a bit more of a chat and as part of this Country Cuppa initiative, which is all about bringing women together to connect, which is exactly what we're doing in our Wellbeing Wednesdays. So Jeanette's participated in 2 so far, 2 Country Cuppas, and just want to acknowledge where people are calling in from today. We've got Karen from Rokewood. She's sitting at her real work desk today, so she's out of lockdown and back at work, and she's very excited about being out and about. Louise Scott, one of our past interviewees, she Charlie Aves, who many of you know, hosted one yesterday, and Louise is hosting one herself. So if you're hosting one, make sure you grab a snapshot of everyone in the Country Cuppa and share it on social media, because the Victorian Rural Women's Network really want to see what's going on. We've got Amy Snowden, we've got Liz Brennan, we've got Steph from South Australia. It's a gorgeous day in World's End, South Australia. So welcome, Steph. Debbie from Warrnambool, the sun's shining and the sea's roaring. That is so beautiful to know. Estelle, who's been one of our regulars from Melbourne. And we've got Belle from Nan.
There is a pronunciation guide.
Nan, in the Adelaide.
Nair, as in hair removal, then add a hard N, insert eye roll. Going for a town. So,
and Amber from Alice Springs, terrific. And Belle said I've got it right, so I'm very excited about that. Thanks, good one, Belle. So Louise, over to you to now hear from our beautiful guest, Sally Murfet. Let's go.
Thanks, Cynthia. So Sally, you're in our hot seat today, the Wellbeing hot seat, and up in the crew, the pilot crew. So welcome.
Thank you very much, Louise. It's a real honour to be here to speak to some of the people that I have long admired in the industry as well. So thank you.
So of course I've done a little bit of stalking in that Cynthia handballed interviewing to me a couple of days ago, and I must say that is an amazing role title that you have, as in the Chief Inspiration Officer. So you've got to tell us about that to start off with, just in case anyone else has seen that and wondered the background story.
Look, it's a real conversation starter, really, and that's the reason that I have chosen that. I don't like stuffy titles and pretentiousness, so something that was a little bit light and fun and playful was certainly something that I was going for. And as I said, every time I hand over my business card or I meet somebody for the first time, everybody makes a comment on it, and it's a great way to get a conversation going without being too stuffy about it.
So I suppose I'm going to zoom into that turn of inspiration. So I think I read a post somewhere about attending was it Simon Sinek session that you were funded to go along, and that whole why model really resonated for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I link that back quite a lot to well-being, because it's understanding the why has been a real game changer for me. It's not only a decision-making framework for me, but it also helps me to understand as an individual what gets me out of bed every morning other than coffee. Everyone that knows me knows that I love my coffee. And yeah, helps me to drive forward in all my business activities. And as I said, it's a great framework for me, because if somebody comes to me and says, look, I've got this great opportunity, or I'm a new client and I want to work with you, if they don't fit with my why, then it's not a priority for me at the moment. And you can say that in a really nice way once you really do understand what that is, what drives you.
So if we were to ask the rest of the group that are here today to help them unravel what their why is, and great actually if we see some chatter about that, is the question about what drives you to get out of bed in the morning?
Yeah, look, when I'm in a forward-facing situation with clients, and I can see that their why is perhaps, or their purpose is a little bit fuzzy, I ask them exactly those questions. You know, what gets you out of bed every morning? What would you do for free, even if nobody was going to pay you to do it? You know, that's a really big indicator for me. Like, if people are prepared to do what they think they want to do and not be paid for it, that's a real indicator to me that they are on the right track.
I love that, Sally. When you think about the last, say, 10 weeks, so many people in, say, our industry have done work for free. And it is because, we love what we do, and we want to see and help people and be their best version of themselves. We'll use that type of phrase. So, yeah, that's critical, isn't it? We need to know why do we get up. If that helps us establish, the why of our well-being, that's even better. So, so if it was Simon Sinek, anyone else has, I suppose, through educational research that really stands by you to help you with your well-being?
That's a really interesting question, because I mean, there's certainly lots of people that have influenced my well-being, but to me, well-being is actually an inside job. You know, you are the one that has to drive that. You are the one that has to be committed to doing the stuff, whatever that looks like for you personally, to help you manage and balance yourself as an individual. So without sounding pretentious and up myself, I think, that for me, well-being has been largely self-driven, but there's certainly people along the way, like the Brene Browns of the world, the Simon Sineks, those sort of people. I just absolutely love them, what they have to say, because they're no BS sort of people. They just say it how it is, and they don't try and get hung up on, keeping the knowledge to themselves. They absolutely love sharing their insights and wisdom, and I absolutely respect them for that.
I think Dr. Paige Williams last week had mentioned Brene Brown. Have you got a favourite, Sally, a book or a podcast or a TED Talk of hers that you push people to?
If I'm in a new client situation and they're not familiar with the purpose and why and stuff like that, I always send them to the Simon Sinek original TED Talk, because I think it explains it beautifully about why, how, and what we do. But yeah, I can't even, you caught me on the spot at the moment. I can't think of the actual name of it, but the Netflix series of Brene Brown.
That she made last year.
Yeah, just love that. Just absolutely love it. So.
did you happen to see the movie that she had a cameo appearance in, where the girls go away to the wine country in California, and she's in the little...
No.
Anyone see that? Or someone will know it. They might pop it in our chat room. Actually, Cynthia, just popping you on notice there. Anything come through the chat there in relation to Sally's point about, you know, what gets you out of bed in the morning?
So Amber from up north, Northern Territory, says that the why for me is creating positive change for our great rural community and mentoring the young ones to find their voice and confidence. Belle said she'd love to hear or see everyone's why if they have one. Amber said, add TED Talks to WW. What is that? I'm not sure. Steph from World's End in South Australia says creating vibrant and vital farming and rural communities through building practical, accessible psychological skills for everyone. Wellbeing Wednesday. Oh, TED Talks to Wellbeing Wednesday. Yeah, good one. And Belle would like to know, Sally, what is your why statement, Sally?
Ah, very good. I knew that was coming.
Wasn't set up.
So my why is that, you know, I believe that the power of agriculture is its people. And so I do that through strategic HRM, project management and facilitation to help ag businesses become more profitable as a result of that and stronger.
I love that term power, because I think I've picked that up also, that you've got that tagline of power agri people. Is that in the snapshot?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And you know, that was a big realization that I got out of you know, really sitting down and doing the work on trying to find my why, because I think I've been guilty in the past of trying to be everything to everyone, and that's got me in a lot of trouble in the past. You know, not criminal trouble, but you know, personal trouble. And so really understanding that that's what drives me, and that it's not only a personal thing for me, it's my business. So that yeah, that's why I've shortened it down.
Love it. So, day in the life of Sally, what's your power of your well-being? What do we see you doing?
Well-being, I think that for me has changed probably like everybody else during COVID times. Well-being for me once upon a time was picking up some work and going to a cafe, which I affectionately call my coffice. So so picking up some work, going and you know, getting some social and human interaction at a local cafe, that is a well-being thing for me, and obviously that's been taken off the agenda in recent times. Well-being also for me is about spending some time to get centered, and that was I used to go and get like a Chinese dry massage. My partner affectionately terms that Jackie Chan massage. So that was my well-being moment, and I think it's really interesting because a lot of people think, and I was guilty of this in the past, a lot of people think that well-being is rather selfish and self-centered, but I've come to learn with a little bit of wisdom and age that it's absolutely essential. If you and I think it was Donna who said about, you know, if you don't have if you're not filling your cup, you can't help other people. I mean, I've probably screwed up that what she said, but that was essentially along the lines of what she said. You know, if you don't look after yourself first, then you can't do, you know, what you want to do as a person. And I find myself to be a bit of a fixer. I like I like fixing people's problems, and you know, if I don't do that well-being stuff, then I'm not in that headspace, or that I'm not in that headspace to be able to put myself in a position to help people and help. Excuse me.
How have you fixed yourself, Sally? What have you done to fix yourself? And if we drill down, it's to fix your well-being, but what have you done yourself?
I'm not sure what you mean by that. Could you ask it?
Yeah, so I think many of us would say, yes, you know, we like fixing problems or other people's problems, but when do you turn it around and, you know, look after yourself and fix something yourself? So you mentioned that dry massage and going out, say, to get a bit of connection in a cafe with the coffers. So, you know, if it's inside rather than outside, what have you done to really build your well-being?
Yeah, look, that's a really interesting question. And I guess as an individual, you've got to come up with strategies that work for you.
Yeah.
And so for me, you know, I pride myself within my business of being able to sit with the discomfort of a person's situation and help them to lean into a conversation. And I can't do that without being present and centered to start off with before I go into those sort of situations. So I often find myself leaning on things like, well, I've got them here actually, flower essences, which you know, you can either spray them or ingest them to, you know, they mightn't do a damn thing, but psychologically for me, they, you know, that's my safety barrier. You know, if I can protect myself going into those sort of situations, I find that I'm a better person for the people or individuals that are on the other end of a conversation that I'm involved with.
That's great. So, yeah, more props, because we had props with Louise, didn't we, on what helps us. That's interesting, isn't it? Just spraying, and as you said, might not actually be working, but it might be, you know, to help you be present if you're working with someone else.
Might even matter.
Yeah, exactly. It's very powerful. So maybe that spray lifts your energy. What else actually would lift your energy? Sally, when we talk about well-being, what do you do?
Human connection for me is one of my well-being go-tos, and you know, I think that's really important. To probably skipping ahead a little bit, but you know, one of my 3 tips is around finding your tribe and people that have, you know, you have a common interest or connection to in some way. And so, you know, getting that human connection with people that you actually like and people that don't drain your energy I think is a really important thing.
Ooh, don't drain your energy. So yeah, what would drain your energy before I get back to what fills it up, what fills the cup up? What would be draining?
Draining for me is where there's no human connection. If you put your hand out to shake somebody's hand and you get a dead fish handshake. Yeah, the handshake. I absolutely despise that. What else? Inconsiderate individuals in the supermarket during COVID times really test my patience. Particularly ones that can't pick a lane, or they stand in the middle of the aisle when you're trying to do the right thing and do the distancing thing. They're just not playing the game at all. And I suppose not getting enough sleep, that's a really big one for me. And you know, that's become particularly relevant for me over the last 2 or 3 months. You know, not that I've been largely impacted by COVID, but certainly you know, taking on the energy of those that are around me as well. You know, worried about different things, and then that impacts on your sleep, and then that impacts on your productivity as an individual, and so on and so on. The list goes on.
Yeah, sleep. I'm passionate about sleep. So how have you fixed your sleep?
Probably sleep hygiene has been one of it. So I during COVID, I've been creating that human connection. So I've, you know, been on the socials and doing those sort of things. And so, you know, the last thing I do overnight is, you know, look at the Instagram feed and stuff like that. So I've had to tidy that up a bit and, you know, make sure that it's not, you know, overrunning my life as I go through.
Yeah, the hygiene's the big killer, isn't it?
It is, definitely.
Practice proper hygiene for sleep. And how many hours does it work? What's the Sally equation for sleeping?
Generally about 8. If I can get 8, I can function on 6, but I can only do that for a certain period of time before things start getting a little bit, not so good.
I should be interested what sleep we all are experiencing at the moment. Is it better sleep or less sleep because of COVID and what everyone's practicing? Just before I ask you the next question, Sally, is there any particular questions, Cynthia?
Yeah, there are a couple. So Debbie's shared a resource, sleepbetter.com.au. So thank you, Debbie. And we've got Belle said she'd love to know, Sally, how did you get to where you are? Can you tell us a bit about your journey to get to Inspire Ag, please? And then Steph said, followed up with, took the words out of my mouth, Belle. I'd love to hear a bit more about Sally's personal journey and establishing her own business.
Okay, you have to go back to the story, Sally?
Yeah, yep.
Okay,
yep, absolutely.
do that. Yep.
Wow, that's an interesting question. Thank you for that, Belle. I think, if I look at a time, I could go anywhere with this conversation, but if I look at a time when my well-being has been challenged and what led me to establish Inspire Ag, I think, I could choose from so many of them because there's a whole catalogue of things that have gone wrong and stressful situations, as with anybody here. But as I get older and wiser, I've kind of come to understand that people come into your lives and situation happens within your life for either a reason, a season, or a lifetime. That's a little mantra that I've carried with me for a little while now. And the other thing that, I used to think was a really bad thing at the time, but I've found with hindsight that often some of the, some new beginnings have often started with some really painful endings. And it's taken me a long time as an individual to get to that point where I understand that, or be thankful, I suppose, even for those doors that have perhaps shut or even slammed in my face at times, some of those detours that have happened along the road, the journey, that have actually guided you to a better place. And if I look at the most recent situation where I was sort of tangled up and I suppose my well-being was perhaps a little bit compromised, and that was after I completed a 3-year contract with the State Farming Organisation here in Tassie. I was working on a project which was skills training and workforce development across the entire primary industries in Tasmania, which was a space I absolutely loved, but fell into by accident, really. I always say to people that, I'm in the industry, in the ag industry by design, but in the HR/people space by accident. And so as I was going through the journey of completing this project with the State Farming Organisation, I had developed some really beneficial relationships, and I thought that they were genuine connections, and for the most part they were, absolutely they were. But there was probably one or two that really shook me as I started to move in or transition to my business Inspire Ag, and that was they took me off guard because I realised that respect and rapport that I had with those people wasn't necessarily for me as Sally Murfet. It was actually for the position that I held at the time. And so, I had to do a lot of work to untangle that, and that has helped me build a better business, I think, is really understanding that. And I've been very fortunate to carry a lot of those relationships into, the Sally 2.0 or whatever you want to call it. I suppose what doesn't challenge you doesn't change you. And, in Australia, I think we know more than anyone about change. We've had more prime ministers in the last 10 years than we have in the last 4 decades. So, yeah, I think that's probably one one of those pivotal moments that I sit and reflect on well-being and how important that has been to me to work my way through that, and to build myself into a better individual that can therefore help my clients build better, more productive, more profitable businesses.
What's the major difference between Sally 1.0 and model Sally 2.0?
Probably more confidence in my own ability, and a maturity, I suppose. And, you know, I guess that comes naturally, but not taking on other people's energy and other people's thoughts and ideas on it, you know, that they don't necessarily have the right answers. I used to get really hung up on trying to please everybody, and that was no good for my well-being at all. I can see a note there in the chat that Belle said that she can answer that. That's
Oh.
Yeah, I'll be really interested to see what she says there.
Can you read it for us, Cynthia?
Yeah, she says, Sally 2.0 is true to herself and understands her why.
Oh, okay, there you go.
And Louise says, I can relate to so much of what you're saying, Sally.
Thank you.
And Sally, I just had a question too about it's a little bit of a different slant, but it's kind of like, I'm just so interested that you work in this area of people with the farming community. And I'm just wondering how, you know, what's the traction? Because so often in my experience of working with, you know, ag, that there's a lot of importance has been put on the technical, and the people stuff is sometimes seen as soft, or, you know, it's tied up with succession planning. That's when you do the talking. But sort of those skills in, you know, for farmers being, you know, they're managers of people. It's super important that they're good with people. How are you finding, are things changing? What are you noticing?
Yeah, I think a lot of that comes back to when I go into a client situation. I joke with people that I take in 4 tools or resources, for the want of another expression, and that is I take in with me a mirror, a box of tissues, some duct tape, and a cattle prod. And yeah, I can see you having a little bit of a giggle about that, but, you know, in a fun way, but a serious way. You know, I'm going in there with those things metaphorically. Sometimes when you go into a business, you need to hold that mirror up to people and say, you know, look, perhaps you might actually be a part of the problem here. When they're quite often when there is a realization that perhaps they might be the problem, there is some tears sometimes, so hence the tissues. Duct tape, because sometimes you've got no other, or sometimes you need to actually, you know, put some duct tape around their mouth and help them actually listen to what other people have to say about the way they might be leading and managing other people and how they're reacting to certain situations. And then sometimes the cattle prod, like there's just no other choice but to give it to them with the cattle prod, like, you know. So that's, you know, that's my analogy. And, you know, being able to sit in people's discomfort is actually a really emotionally and draining experience. And again, that comes back to, you know, my wellbeing practices of being able to put that bubble around me when I go into those scenarios, through the flower essences, you know, through some simple breathing, and just, you know, saying to yourself as you're going into them, you know, I'm here to help them lean into this conversation, and what they say and do is not necessarily about me. It might actually be about what they're thinking and feeling themselves internally at the time. You know, it takes a lot to separate that. I used to get really, really caught up in all of that. And now that I've been able to separate that, you know, that is their experience, and you know, I'm just here to share in that and help them, guide them down a certain path, and to get better outcomes for their businesses through their people.
What about the tissues? Who are they for, you or the other person?
I know it's for the other person or the people that I'm meeting with, because you know, sometimes once they do get that realization that they might actually be a part of the problem, it can actually become really emotional for them.
That's the emotion, right?
Yeah.
I can see you, unless it's already there, your business card or tag with images of the prod and the mirror and the duct tape.
Yeah, no.
Fantastic.
Probably wouldn't be a great branding choice.
No.
I've just got some comments here, Sally. Amber says, when are you heading to Alice Springs to talk to the pastoralists? And Fiona says, Amber, after Sally visits Western Queensland. And they said, road trip, a sellout. And Donna said, we'd love you to come to Alice.
Oh,
so there you go. And Anthea says, truly insightful. Thank you for sharing.
Gosh, ladies, you're making a lady blush.
It's not just the light in your room. I just wanted to pick up, and I think it might have been Fiona commenting about this needing to please that you got over. I don't know if I've mentioned it before. There's an amazing book, and it's by Sally Helgeson and Marshall Goldsmith, and it's the 12 kind of traps that is aimed at women fall into. And one of the key ones that all my clients resonate with the most, the disease to please. Sort that out. It's changes the whole dynamics of, and that's what you've been saying, Sally.
And I don't think you necessarily, you know, you don't do some work on it and it happened and you're fixed. Like it's a work in process. It's an evolution, and you know, you've got to do the work to build the muscle. And if you don't do that, then yeah, it's like going to the gym and expecting to lose weight when you're not prepared to actually do the work that goes with actually going to the gym.
Absolutely. It's so much like a rubber band, isn't it? It's so easy just to go back to what's comfortable and what you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's that pressure. Okay, so what about gratitude? What are you thankful for? Be it, you know, the journey you've had and the catalogue that you've acquired, or other people.
It's not a really innovative answer, but you know, I'm grateful for my partner Peter and my daughter Stella, and for different reasons. My daughter Stella is almost 11. And she has this uncanny ability with emotional intelligence. I've never seen a person that young really just have a natural gift in this space. She picks up on my energy so much. Like, I can be sitting there pondering over a situation or scenario that I'm trying to work out solutions for. It might be personal, it might be a client-focused one. But she has this it's an uncanny ability to go, Mum, what are you actually thinking about, or what's the matter? Like, she really picks up on energy. And there was a time where I would say, oh, nothing, don't worry about it, you know, it's an adult thing, you know, go and do whatever you were doing, like, and try and really brush it off. But I've actually come to the conclusion, probably in the last 12 months, that by doing that, I'm probably doing her as a young person a disservice. So I've had to learn, and again, it's still a work in progress. I've had to learn to say to her, look, I am thinking about X. You know, what I'm trying to do is get to this particular solution. It is nothing for you to worry about, because she's a sensitive person. So I need to let her give her some peace around that. But yeah, I've had to do that to sort of teach her some resilient skills along the way, but also to help her develop that, because that is an absolutely precious skill that I don't want her to ever lose, because I think it will take her, you know, take her throughout her life. and I'm also thankful for my partner, Peter, of 17 years. God knows why he's put up with me for that long. But, I think he's probably taught me a lot about myself as a person as well, because I'm not a person that, they say you have to love yourself and all that sort of stuff to be a good individual. And I'd be lying if I sat here and told you that I was a person that loved myself. And but sorry, I've lost my train of thought. I got a bit tangled up in the emotion of that. But I guess, it's hard to think that somebody can love you when you don't actually love yourself. But again, with that well-being and that progress, that progression is, I've had to sort of learn to shift my dialogue. Rather than saying that I love myself, I've now switched that around to say, I love my body for what it can do, not necessarily that I love it. Does that make sense? I've probably said that's probably a bit clunky how I've said that, but it's, that's how I'm working through it.
Well, we learned last week from Paige Williams about, your self-talk and how you might talk about yourself. Would you talk that same way to your best friend? Really resonated for me so you appreciate aspects of yourself, rather than putting going for the negative is so easy.
Yeah, and look, I've had to be really quite careful about what I was saying, because my daughter Stella, as I said, is almost 11, and she's in that really vulnerable stage, and I don't want her to go through what I went through with body image and stuff like that. So I have to be very careful about what I say and the imprint that I'm potentially leaving on her if I'm saying negative stuff about myself. And what I'm saying to her by doing that is that it's okay to talk negatively about yourself. So again, work in progress.
So where's Stella learned their emotional intelligence? Is it from you?
I think that's just her as an individual. I mean, I think she gets some of that from me, but I have an uncanny ability to know, to go into a situation and know very quickly if somebody's BSing me about what is actually the lay of the land in a particular scenario. But I think Stella takes that to the next level.
Which is great to hear that our children are like that. We've not been taught emotional intelligence up until only recently, I think, through schools. And to think that our future people in agri, any business, have a higher EI, we're only going to benefit from that. So Stella and her mates are going to help us out. Now, how about your top 3, Sally? You've told us about the...
I've just got one question, Louise. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, that's okay.
I'm a good interrupter. Fiona's asked a ripper of a question, and she would love to know or hear your observations, Sally, of changes in the ag industry, e.g. are emotional intelligence skills and the human skills becoming more respected, or do you think generally things are still the same?
That is a ripper.
That is a ripper. I think there are some pockets of excellence. So there are groups of people that really understand that people are where the magic happens in a business, and without them, you essentially don't, without people and without understanding the dynamics of people, you don't have a business, is what it comes down to. You might be good at all that technical and the production stuff, but if you don't understand people, which are the people that actually drive your production, then it's a pointless exercise. But I think, and I'm generalizing here, largely generalizing, is that as an industry, no, we don't get this stuff. And, that's why I have dedicated the rest of my life to do this, because I understand, through my own experiences, in the past, bosses that have actually lit a fire within me rather than under me are the ones that have actually got the best out of me. And so, I want to try and translate more of that onto the ag sector. But it's a challenging task. It's a really challenging task.
And Sally, also, I just, we had a chat earlier and you were saying that you were interested in, you're very interested in psychological safety and some of those concepts. How are they, do you want to just talk a little bit more about that and what your passion is around that?
Yeah, I'll give you a real life example of psychological safety and how it impacts on people. I have, in the last 6 months, just completed a project for an organisation here in Tasmania called 2610, and the project was looking at the impacts on productivity and performance of individuals that had low language literacy and numeracy levels as an individual. And from that, there was a scenario where I was called into a client's coffee table or kitchen table, and they said to me, right, you've got to help me sack this individual. Like his performance is really bad. We're sick of the banter that goes on and the problematic behaviour that we're experiencing from this individual. You have to help us sack him. And I said, look, I'm prepared to sit here and I want you to talk me through what has happened up until this point to make you come to this decision where you want to exit this person out of your business. And so that client sat there and spoke to me for an hour about everything that was wrong about that individual. And at the end of that conversation, I said to him, have you actually considered that this particular individual has literacy challenges, i.e. can't read or write? And the guy just about dropped his cup of coffee on the floor. He said, I can't believe we didn't pick up on that. It's right in front of us. We have a son that's in a private school here in Tasmania, has literacy challenges. We have all the tools and resources under our nose to support this individual, but we didn't pick up on the signs. And once that conversation then led on to having a conversation with the individual and really getting to the bottom of that, and psychological safety come into play there, is that he was using technology, so a mobile phone, and getting Siri to read him instructions, for example, that had been left on their to-do lists. Like they had an electronic to-do list because there was 2 properties. They were remote from each other. So the owner would type in what he wanted done. The employee would then go, okay, Siri, read that out to me. Sometimes he didn't quite understand what it was. So some of the behavior that the client was experiencing was him giving him a phone call and saying, look, boss, I don't understand what you've said. Can you talk me through it? And the client was getting really upset. He said, we've already provided these instructions. Why are you coming back to us? And so often what this particular individual was doing was he was going home overnight. He was downloading to his wife everything that had happened during the day. His wife would then transcribe email reports back to the client, so they didn't pick up that there was a problem, because I thought, well, we're getting these emails, he must be able to read and write. And at the time, the client showed me a text message, and he said, this is the sort of crap that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, 6 or 8 line texts that aren't really telling us what we need to know, etc., etc. And he said, that takes up a huge amount of my time. And ironically, the individual had actually shown me that same text message, and he said, how long do you think it took me to write that? And I said to him at the time, I don't know, about 5 minutes or so, because it was a basic text for those that have the capacity in that area. He said, that took me half an hour to write that text. He said, I can read and I can write, but my proficiency is just not there. But he didn't have the psychological safety to bring that up in a work situation to say, I have a problem. And then the second situation where psychological safety came into it was, there was support services around that. So that individual could have went to a library in Tasmania and got help from a coach to help them learn those skills. But he said, I come from a small area. All my family are around here. If I had have gone to the library and not being natural territory for him, you know, they would have picked up that there was a problem and he would have had to divulge what was going on. And the other thing, you know, that's a long story, but the other thing that really broke my heart in that conversation was he said that, oh God, I still get a bit worked up when I say it. He said, you know, I try and structure my day so I don't have to go home of a night and read to my children. So he was putting in all these hours so that he didn't have to be around at a time when his children were likely to want to get a story read to them. And that just breaks my heart every time I talk about it. So that's psychological safety for you.
Yeah, there must be so many cases the same around Australia.
There is.
Picked up.
There is, but there is, what we found from the consultation was that again, psychological safety is what it essentially comes down to, but there is just such a huge stigma around it, you know, and we're not prepared to talk about it, which is such a shame, because, you know, if we can get the challenge on the table, then there are tools and resources and support out there to help individuals be more proficient and have you know, have the skills to help them step up in the business. And I think that's the sad reality of it, is that a lot of people are not flagging that they have challenges in that area, and they're prepared to stay at the level that they're at, even though that's holding them back from progressing within their career. That's the really sad part about it for me.
Absolutely. Sally, you're the warrior. You're going to make sure that that doesn't happen. So what are we going to do as a group? What are your tips for us so that we can, you know, have the power within ourselves just to make that change?
Yeah, okay. So my top 3 tips are understand your why. We spoke about that at the start, but, you know, once you discover that and understand what your life purpose is, everything else will take care of itself. Find your tribe. So I think one of the best things that we can do as individuals for our well-being is find genuine human connection. Somewhere where we can find a shared space of comfort in common interests, experiences, values, those sort of things, and do what it takes to find those people, that tribe, and love them hard. And the third one for me is to choose growth over comfort. Anyone that knows me or has worked with me knows that I'm a really big fan of saying to people, my mantra is almost that I'm happy that you're uncomfortable, or I'm happy that you're sitting in discomfort here at the moment, because I find once people work through that, you know, better outcomes happen time and time again. It's almost a recipe. But I think, you know, there's a saying, it's a very rural sort of saying, but, you know, it's that growth and comfort essentially can't ride the same horse. So you've got to choose which one that you want and ride with that if you'll excuse the pun on that. Because if we only do what we're comfortable with, I'm just trying to think of a way to say it. If we only do what we're comfortable with, we're never going to understand what we're actually truly capable of.
What horse are you on right now, Sally? Are you on the comfort horse or the discomfort sitting in the chair there?
Anyone that knows me will absolutely tell you that I'm not in a paddock that I'm comfortable with right now.
Well, that's great. So just while you're still on that big paddock of horses of discomfort, are there questions, Cynthia, that we can still squeeze in with Sally? I noticed something in the Q&A.
Just nothing in Q&A. Just lots of feedback about, so glad I'm in your tribe, Sally, from Bernadette. Belle says, I'm amongst my tribe right now. Thanks, Sally, from Melva. Lots of conversation around the literacy issues. Louise says it's so good that he trusted you, that he trusted you, Sally, and you know, again, good on that employer for being open enough to realise that and be open to changing his mind, or her mind. Hey, Sally. Oh, so Belle says, Sally, would you consider running online workshops so we can discover our why? Nosh says, and Fiona said, how did that guy get on? If we got an update, what was the outcome for that employee?
Well, look, thankfully that guy is still gainfully employed, and I guess that particular individual was actually lucky that I was involved in his recruitment process. So I knew he was a good stick, you know, because I had done all the referee checks and everything on him. So I knew that it wasn't something that he was doing to be deceitful. I knew that I could tell that there was something, a problem elsewhere. And I think, excuse me, I think going back to that, oh no, I'll leave it there. So yeah.
So just checking, so you onboarded and they were asking you to offload the connection. Right, okay, part of the business.
But see, isn't that great that you were involved, because most people wouldn't have you involved and they'd just sack the person.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so Sally, it is so good that so we talked with Fiona about diversity in who our conference speakers are, for example, and how good would it be to have more Sallys in our rural industry conferences, and being, you know, Sally is a thought leader in this area, but how good would it be to have the women, you know, the women that we've heard from over the past 10 weeks, how good would it be to be having more of their voices and perspectives being heard, and so that these issues are on the agenda? Because that literacy one, that's not something that you hear as an issue raised at lots of our industry and community events. So, you know, if we've got any influencing role that we can play in when events and workshops are being set up or conference speakers are being looked for or whatever, then I think it's really important to have different voices like Sally's at the table that then enable a light to be shone on these issues, and that they're normalised and it's not a shame thing.
Yeah.
This is the reality of life. Sally, are you getting, because you spoke at the Grains Research and Development Corporation updates around the country recently, are you finding that perhaps you are getting on the agenda a bit for speaking now?
Yeah. At the start of 2020, I was set up for my best year yet in terms of public speaking, and opportunities were sort of expanding left, right and centre, but obviously COVID's put a big hold on that at the moment. But it's, as I said, this is not a space that I'm really comfortable in, or a paddock that I'm very comfortable in, but I understand also that the information and insight that I do have to share does make a difference. And so, you know, I'm doing a lot of work around how I can better improve myself to get those messages out, so that they can help normalize some of the issues that I'm finding, but also help my clients build, as I said at the start, build better, more profitable businesses.
Terrific. So just I'm going to draw us to a close there because it's 2:01. So I'm going to get us to take a little photo of us first, and then I'm going to invite everyone to stick around for our country cuppa, and Louise is going to just tell us about our speaker for next week.
Read my mind. So next week, our 11th episode, we're interviewing Tanya Kitto, and Tanya is in WA. Her and her husband run a farm. They produce lupin and are the biggest sellers of lupin in the world, apparently. And Tanya also, her business, her husband's a farmer, and she's the baker and runs my provincial kitchen out of the farm. So she found out 5 years ago that she had Crohn's disease, and hence has created this kitchen, and is the business just booming, helping people who also have Crohn's. So next week to hear her story.
Terrific, terrific. Okay, so let's just grab a little snap. Maybe can one of our kind participants also take a snap of us, because mine just doesn't seem to have worked very well the last few weeks. So I'll just give it a go.
Are you doing it?
Alt print screen. Okay, let's see. 1, 2, 3. Go, Sally. Done it. Okay, I'm going to stop recording. Yes, stop.